Make a weird face.
All right.
Get a good thumbnail opportunity.
And I think this time I'll try to share the agenda doc
Okay.
so that people, so that on YouTube, I think that would become the thumbnail.
All
Not that that's
right.
the only reason I'm doing it, but
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Well, Nick, you've got the first item, so you want to talk through the that piece?
yes. So just a friendly reminder to make sure that you've read the MR regarding availability over velocity. And
Hey, Nick, we're looking at your calendar instead of the doc.
whoops.
There you go.
Okay. All right. So yeah, just make sure that you've read the MR regarding availability over velocity, and then there was an ACK form sent out to acknowledge that you've read that and understand it. So if you haven't filled out that Google form yet, please do so and make sure it's submitted. I have the next item too. So just another friendly reminder that on Slack, we only keep 90 days of Slack history. So MRs, issues, Google Docs are the preferred avenue for communication around work items and team process stuff. I think if we end up going back and forth a lot about something in Slack, that might be an indication that we need to take it to an issue. So it's not something that I'm not thinking of a specific example right now. It's just something that somebody reminded me of, and I think it's just a good thing to keep in mind as our team ramps up and we start having more in-depth discussion around issues and our team process.
Cool. Do you have any other thoughts about availability over velocity? What's your feeling there?
Yeah, I think it makes a lot of sense. I mean, as a newbie, it's not something that has directly affected our team much,
Sure.
but I think it makes a lot of sense. I think it's one of those things where you kind of have to go slow to go fast. So the more we focus on availability and security, the faster we'll be able to move. And so I think they're all interrelated, and you can't have good long-term velocity without availability. And that's a sentiment I've heard echoed by a lot of different folks. So I think in general, engineers in the company get that. Curious to hear
Yeah,
other thoughts.
I think in particular with the kind of work that we're going to be doing in ecosystem, there is at least an opportunity to build things that are somewhat fragile. Right? We're relying on and integrating with external services, and so there's a high level of risk of fragility to the kinds of things that we are composing. So to that end, with that availability over velocity in mind, like it is worthwhile, especially for ecosystem. It's worthwhile for everyone, but it's worthwhile, especially for ecosystem, to really make sure we've got solid test coverage, that we're thinking through monitoring and quantitatively viewing like usage metrics to make sure that the things that we're building are always available and that they're continuing to work even though there are changes on these external services. Which hopefully that's not an issue we run into a ton, but it definitely happens, right? So if Atlassian changes things on their API end, we need to be aware of it because that can impact availability. And so some in particular for us to think about. So I think it's a really important point.
Yeah, agreed. I think with these integrations and having to consider different services, there will be some very fun and interesting testing scenarios to think through, and especially if we want to get into like test automation around these services. I think there's some very unique challenges around that, and making sure that we can test for regressions, yeah, as updates come through, and be able to understand what is happening in say various versions of Jira.
Cool. All right. I'm sorry, I wanted to just pull it back there for a second. Arturo, you want to keep going?
Yeah. So this week I've been working in different issues, but the last three that I pick, basically the problem is they are like very old, like 1 or 2 years old. So I cannot reproduce the thing. So what I'm doing is try to reproduce the issue, um, and maybe write the steps that I follow and other questions that I could have about the issue. And I think that I'm going to wait like a couple of days, and if no one say anything about the issue, I'm going to close the issues.
Okay.
And I know that this is going to happen at the beginning, because I'm kind of picking things and also understand the issue and then becoming familiar with the problem. But yes, as I say last week, I expect that I'm with more time, probably we don't have this problem anymore, like picking something and we are not able to work on that. Yeah, so just to let you know about this
I think
yeah, go ahead, Patrick. And something that I discussed with Nick was about having, because the KPIs that we have, I'm not sure if they are related to merge request. So maybe in our case, maybe it makes sense to have a new metric that is basically issues closed, because maybe we close 5, or we are going to close 5 issues without any merge request.
Yeah, and I know. So, okay, a few things there. I think so. First off, all of that sounds great. I think that's awesome. I'm sure you will. Just make sure that you're pinging Nick and myself on anything that you're closing, because you can't reproduce it, just for visibility. And I'm sure you will, and that's great. So I'm not worried about anything there. I think all of that is fine. To your second point, I think that you're right. Like, in time, I think this is going to become less and less of an issue. What we're dealing with is, this was an area of the product that was very underserved for the last few years, which is fine. And like, that's why we're here. It wasn't something that was explicitly owned by anyone. And so there's a lot of backlog hygiene that we're basically having to come through. That I have already closed out a few myself before y'all got here. There was a bunch of stuff that just required like technical validation that I was unable to do, and that we'll continue to see some of that stuff come through. But my hope is, over the next probably 6 months, like my assumption would be, we probably get those down to almost zero. It's just going to be this first period where we're going to run into a lot of stuff that's just been languishing, and no one has really given it a solid look, and we're going to be the first people to really touch it. So I don't think that's a problem. Now, around a KPI for issues being closed resolved, I'm not sure. I know I was just in the development group conversation. There was some discussion around using a slightly different KPI. Sid brought up some really great points around what possible KPIs you can use. And so kind of the short version of that discussion was that you've got 3 possible metrics that you could use for measuring velocity. So you can look at weight. The problem with weight is that, and this doesn't help for solving for closed, I'm just giving you an overview of the conversation, right? So you can look at weight. The problem with weight is that sometimes people will inflate weights. You can look at MRs, which is to your point, but then there are some other issues with that, because we'll look at, people will split things up, or to your point here, like maybe things don't get closed. You can also look at release post items, but then that tends to prefer seeing net new features versus improvements to other work. So all of that kind of aside, I think it's fair to say, like, we should be keeping an eye on things that have been closed and resolved. But I honestly, I wouldn't worry too much about it at this juncture, because my assumption is we're going to see less and less of it over the next few months. So I don't know.
Yeah, I know the worry is basically if we are tracking productivity in some way, we are productive, but in a different way that is not being measured. It's just our discussion with Nick yesterday in our one-on-one. And as you say, yeah, like you have a metric and people can hack that metric or, do whatever is needed in order to satisfy the metric. So, yeah, it's always tricky with metrics.
Yeah.
Yeah, I will say this, expecting a brand new engineer, I think, to have 10 MRs per month right at the outset. So I think we're making good progress, and there is a page, a dashboard I linked to a couple agenda items down that does give some insight into issues and bugs. So it's not all of the issues, but a lot of the issues that you are going through and closing right now are bugs and would be reflected on that dashboard. I think we can keep track of that just manually so that we can say, well, here are the MRs that our team has created and merged the last couple of months, but also here are, and maybe in explaining that MR number, we can say, well, we also closed this many issues, even if there's not, say, an automated way to track that. I'd like to just keep tabs on that as a team so that we can explain that along with whatever throughput metric whatever throughput metric that our team ends up or number that our team ends up at.
Yeah, I can get behind all that. I think that I would alternately just kind of make a really simple statement of like, y'all are just getting started. Don't stress.
Yeah.
It's all good. All right, cool. Want to talk about the next thing?
Yeah. So next thing is something that maybe we could have a conversation because it's going to be more efficient than just writing. And so basically we have this weekly meeting that I'm not sure what is the purpose of the meeting because we are talking also about scheduling the iterations and also a retrospective for the iteration, I guess. And I'm not sure if that's, or maybe the scheduling could be part of this meeting. Just, we need a specific separate meeting or basically to decide more or less what are the things for the different meetings and what are the things that we need to be synchronized or face-to-face or what we can do asynchronous, like for example, retrospective or maybe something like a daily stand-up or weekly stand-up or whatever we feel that is the best. So basically to have that conversation together.
Sure. Nick, you want to tackle that? Or would you like me to go first?
Yeah, I'll say a couple things about it, and I don't think I have an answer, and it's going to be somewhat of an ongoing discussion. I think that from what I've seen from other teams, there's a weekly meeting that's often somewhat decoupled from scheduling, and in this weekly meeting, there'll be sort of this format of these types of team announcements, and then there will be some discussion of some highlighted issues, but maybe not everything that's going on. And then scheduling will be a separate thing where you open up the workflow board and go through item by item, issue by issue, and make sure that it's triaged and that it has a milestone assigned, and that's where things get moved around. So it seems like if we're trying to keep this to a fairly short call, those could be broken up. I think that with this type of weekly meeting, it's sort of a face-to-face sync up with product and engineering, kind of general updates and announcements, reminders, things like that. I don't think we should get into any in-depth discussions about issues, because I think that if we're doing that, then that might be indicative that we need to actually take it into a discussion in the issue itself, or in an MR. So we shouldn't be using these meetings as say in-depth discussion about issues, but just kind of more of this general face-to-face sync up. So those are my thoughts. Initially, yeah, this weekly meeting is for these general announcements, discussions, and then scheduling would be a separate thing where we go more in depth into all the issues in the board. But yeah, curious to hear other thoughts.
Yeah, I think in general, I will thumbs up to all of that. My view on it is I want to try to keep, the things that are going to block engineering are going to be I guess all of them, but the retrospective I'd like to keep asynchronous, which is, I think it seems to already be the company's perspective, but especially with respect to the different time zones that we're in, I want to make sure that as much as we're doing as possible is asynchronous. I think that for the most part, Nick and I have yet to do this for the first time yet, so we're going to see how it works out, and we'll just let it evolve. My take on scheduling at the moment is I'm going to be setting a priority inside of the product workflow board that I have set up, and then Nick and I will work together on moving those things over into scheduling. And then I think we can asynchronously have a discussion with the rest of the team on, does that make sense? Is there something in there that's no good? And kind of help us provide that feedback asynchronously. Because I don't think that we need to make sure that, Arturo and Justin are available in differing time zones to sit there and have an hour-long discussion about well, do we want to do this now, or 2 weeks from now, or let us do that synchronously, and then y'all can chime in async, and we're happy to. I'm totally fine with taking that feedback, but I want to be as mindful and respectful of your time as possible. And then as far as the weekly call, yeah, I really want to just kind of keep it to broad announcements and getting to just keep the team kind of in general alignment.
Cool. That this is another point, that having Justin's 2 hours ahead or behind you, I'm not sure exactly. Yeah, I'm not sure if probably maybe we can do this before the company call, not after, because after is I'm not sure, it's more a discussion between I'm not sure where are you based, Aileen, but I know Nick and Patrick, they are 12 hours from Justin. So it's a conversation between you, I guess, because for me, I'm in the middle. So for me, it's not a problem.
I'm totally 2 hours behind, so just to complicate things further.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I'm totally okay with rescheduling, but again, yeah, keeping in mind Aileen, it's she's on the West Coast here, and it's full 12 hours, so it's complicated.
Yeah.
I think we need to be mindful of doing as much as we can asynchronously. As much as I love seeing all of your wonderful faces, I think it's probably important for us to be very, very async. And as we grow this team, the problem's only going to get worse. So I think that's why it's important, right? And that's why it's important as a GitLab value to try to favor asynchronous communication. So, but you know what? Let's keep iterating on it, and we'll figure out something that works for everybody. Cool.
Yeah, just my 2 cents. Since
yeah,
I mean, for me it's usually okay. I'm quite okay with slightly off hours, but I think we'll probably need some trial and error in this, and I do think that async communication here would be better, because as much as I am usually awake at this hour, being productive is not always the same. Right now, I'm mainly listening in, and I don't really have to think much, don't have to contribute much. But if I actually had to, I'm not sure. The is peak productivity at this hour.
Sure. Well, and I think that's also why it's important that we try to, and Nick's been doing a great job, but try to make sure we have good notes in the agenda doc. So if you can't make it or you choose not to make it because it just doesn't work out for you, I think we need to make sure that that's why at GitLab in general, like we have really good agenda docs that have really good notes in them so that you can always catch back up. You can always see what happened and you can always chime in even if you can't be there. So.
Yeah, I saw those, and especially the recordings are very useful.
Yeah,
you don't have to have the FOMO.
Yeah, absolutely. So cool. Anything else?
That's all.
Awesome. Cool. Nick.
All right. Yeah. Before I move on to this, I will also just put in another reminder that we have an issue open on our team subgroup for discussing weekly meeting time. So I think all these points that everyone brought up here, we should add those to the issue with our preferences and suggestions and keep the discussion going there. Yeah, my item is just that in this dashboard that I linked to, I noticed a lot of group ecosystem bugs without a priority or severity. And just want to see who's responsible for triaging those. How should we handle those? I assume we want to get some labels on them.
The two of us, bud.
All right. Yeah.
So yes, agreed. We need to start going through there. I've just been trying to, I already knew there was enough work in the pipeline, so I wasn't going to push on it further. But yeah, the two of us can, let's think about this in our next one-on-one and in the scheduling call, right? And we can start going through those together and working on them. Are you on the TriageBot list yet? I
don't think so.
Okay, we need to get you on TriageBot. I think Chun was on it previously, and we need to get him taken off and you added to it. TriageBot can help us with some of that.
Awesome.
It sends you, it's an automated reminder of issues that have not been scheduled that have certain severity levels. So cool. Anything else? Is that good? Does that work?
Nope, that's it.
Okay, so the last piece, I just really want to call out Eileen for doing such a great job. Eileen, you're the best. Thank you for helping me with all of this stuff. I am doing the problem validation, or we're calling it the product development flow process. So I'm working through that with Eileen's help and trying to validate the Jira group level integration. A, that it is a real problem, and B, that integrating at a group level solves that problem, are what I'm going to be looking to find out. And so I'll be working with her to interview customers and collect that data and talking throughout our business with stakeholders to understand better how to do it. I think it's a really big issue that impacts some really big customers. So I think it's going to be really cool, an important piece of work that is going to be very exciting for a lot of places inside the company. So if you want to read more, there's a ton of info in that issue. Feel free to check it out. Feel free to send me or Eileen or whatever, leave comments in the issue. Cool. That's all I got. And we have 2 minutes. Anything else?
Awesome. Yeah, I just wanted to quickly go through the issue overview. We have a couple moved from 12.5 to 12.4. So thanks for doing that, Arturo. And Arturo also has another MR created that's in review. Were there any specific issues you wanted to quickly highlight, Arturo?
No, I think I moved 2-3 issues that I think that I can do in this iteration, but 2 of them, they are already like, as I said, it's not longer an issue. So that I'm trying to move things that I'm be able to finish before the end of the iteration, but we still have a couple of weeks. So probably I'm going to move more things. But I don't want to take more and more, because I have these like kind of block tickets that I'm not sure if I need to work or I'm going to close. So at the moment, maybe I'm not going to move more things because it's so many plates at the same time, So let's close things, but I still have work to do. so don't worry.
Okay.
Awesome.
Awesome. Well, cool. All right. Well, we are at time. So everybody, thank you very much for your time and have a great day.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
Yeah. Thank you.
See you later.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.